Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're breaking down a truly fascinating concept that is going to completely change everything you thought you knew about language learning. We're looking at Marc Green's revolutionary and honestly highly structured approach to not just speaking a foreign language, but actually sounding and feeling like a native speaker. Seriously, if you've ever felt completely overwhelmed by dense grammar textbooks or those endlessly frustrating vocabulary apps, you are in the exact right place. We're going to unpack a strategy step by step to show you exactly how to bypass years of academic grinding and unlock the true social benefits of fluency.
Okay, let's dive into this. I want you to imagine the sheer panic of an impenetrable language barrier. Picture it. You're in a massive, foreign metropolis. It's cold, it's getting dark, and you are utterly and completely lost. You can't read a single sign, you can't ask anyone for directions, and every face around you just feels like a closed door because you don't share a single word of common ground. It's a deeply isolating and honestly terrifying feeling, right? Well, this exact nightmare is where our story begins today, and it was the catalyst for an absolutely incredible linguistic journey.
The year was 1987. Marc Green was just a 15-year-old kid on a tour of the Soviet Union. On his very first night, feeling a bit adventurous, he and a friend actually snuck out of their hotel to explore the world-famous Moscow metro. To play it safe, Marc meticulously copied down the Cyrillic letters of their starting station onto a notepad. Good plan, right? Well, after riding the trains and taking in the sights, they tried to navigate back, showing locals this notepad. But as this timeline shows, things went terribly wrong. It turns out, Marc hadn't written down the name of the station at all. He had literally just written down the Russian word for exit. Completely stranded, they finally flagged a taxi, only for the driver to demand $50 for a short ride, which was an absolute fortune and totally out of reach for two stranded teenagers. They were literally kicked out into the cold. Now, this high-stakes extortion and the sheer trauma of the event caused him to cringe at the sound of Russian for years, but it also sparked a lifelong, unstoppable drive. He realized the absolute necessity of actually understanding the local language, which ultimately led him to learn 4 languages fluently.
Section 1. Redefining language fluency. Now, Green actually had a pretty unique head start in life. Raised entirely bilingual, his toddler brain logically concluded that men and women simply spoke entirely different languages. While that's kind of hilarious, it taught him early on that speaking like a native isn't just about words. It grants you a distinct identity, superior problem-solving skills, and deep social acceptance.
Green compares learning a language to a deck of playing cards lying face down on a table. As you learn, it's like you slowly turn those cards over. Turning over about 25% of that deck represents your first major linguistic milestone, the basic level. At this stage, your deck is a quarter full. You've got a foundational vocabulary, you understand basic grammar, and you can handle simple, everyday conversations. You can order food, ask for directions, maybe even navigate your way out of a subway station. But let's be real, you're still very much translating everything in your head.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is what happens when you cross that halfway mark. When you turn over more than 50% of those cards, you hit the fluency level. This is a magical threshold, guys. At this point, the language physically enters your subconscious. It's no longer just active memorization, it is hardwired. This means that even if you don't speak or use the language for an entire decade, you're not going to forget it. You can pick it right back up in a very short amount of time simply because you're now comfortable actually thinking in that language.
Section 2. Skipping academic mastery. Look, we have to acknowledge that while spaced repetition apps and the Peter Principle save you a little time, there's no real magic hack to reach basic fluency. You still have to do the work. However, once you hit that 50% fluency mark, a massive, unbelievable shortcut opens up.
To really understand this shortcut, look at what traditional language education expects you to do next: achieve mastery. Mastery means acquiring an in-depth knowledge of specialized fields, understanding complex classic literature, and developing a highly sophisticated vocabulary. It's what academia requires for high-level exams or university papers. Going from basic fluency to this level of mastery is a brutally slow, grueling process that requires a proportionally massive amount of effort. And because of this incredibly steep mountain, most people just burn out and stop at fluency.
So the crucial point is, you can skip mastery completely. Seriously, think about it. There are millions of native speakers around the world right now who don't have an in-depth knowledge of specialized academic fields or a sophisticated literary vocabulary. Yet they're native speakers. You do not need to read classic French poetry to be accepted as a local in Paris. You can completely bypass this exhausting academic grind and still unlock all the profound social benefits, the new identity, and the deep cultural acceptance of a native speaker.
Section 3. 3 steps to sounding native. Let's move to and see how this builds. If we're skipping the academic textbooks, what do we actually do? Well, Green outlines a highly actionable 3-step roadmap focused entirely on how locals actually sound and act in their everyday lives.
Step 1 is arguably the most overlooked aspect of language learning: minimizing your accent. Green suggests a meticulous method he calls the perfect sentence technique. Basically, you grab a native speaker, open a book to a completely random sentence, and read it out loud. The native speaker then rates you: obvious accent, slight accent, or no accent. Then you listen to them read that exact same sentence. Finally, you repeat it. You do this over and over, refining every single vowel and consonant until that native speaker can no longer hear an accent. Yes, it takes immense patience for just one sentence, but eliminating your accent completely changes how locals unconsciously behave towards you. They literally stop treating you like an outsider.
And this brilliantly illustrates step 2, prioritizing local, spoken expressions over formal vocabulary. Compare the French side by side here. A textbook is always going to teach you to say mon travail for my work, les vêtements for clothes, and l'argent for money. But out on the street, a native speaker talking to a buddy is going to say mon boulot, les francs, and le fric or les sous. If you use the textbook terms in a casual, everyday setting, you instantly out yourself as a foreigner, no matter how flawless your grammar is. You have to interact with locals to build up a critical mass of these authentic, street-level expressions.
Step 3 takes this right into the physical realm, adopting cultural traits. Remember, communication isn't just about words. Look at the pain sounds here. If an American bumps their head, they naturally yell ouch. But a German in that exact same situation, they'll instinctively yell aua. Or consider a tea party. If an American agrees with you, they make a sound like uh-huh. A German might say mm-hmm, and a French person might make a completely different tonal sound altogether. You have to actively listen for these minute cultural pain sounds, agreement markers, and hand gestures, and then internalize them until they become your automatic responses.
Section 4. The resolution, the immersion mindset. Implementing all these steps requires a major psychological shift. You must grant yourself the permission to take on a new identity and genuinely drop your old one when you switch languages. You have to truly, unwaveringly believe you can act and sound native.
To fuel this mindset, you need practical immersion tactics. Now, living abroad or living with locals is obviously the gold standard. Engaging in romantic relationships with a native speaker is incredibly effective for rapid learning, for sure. But hey, even if you're stuck right in your hometown, you can still immerse yourself. Watch foreign TV shows and actively mimic the characters out loud. And here is one of the most powerful tactics: learning the lyrics to emotional songs in your target language. Singing along to these stories helps perfect your pronunciation, but more importantly, the raw emotion of the music anchors those local expressions incredibly deep into your active, everyday vocabulary.
Which brings this explainer full circle, right back to that freezing night in Moscow. After the sheer trauma of the $50 taxi extortion, Marc Green was terrified of the Russian language. Every time he heard it, he cringed. So how did he finally conquer this deep-seated fear and apply his own immersion tactics? Well, as he famously put it, "I was able to overcome my fear of the Russian language. I married a Russian girl." It's brilliant. He now has children who speak Russian to him every single day in his own home. It is just the absolute ultimate testament to his method of deep, cultural, and personal immersion.
So there you have it. By skipping the grueling academic mastery phase and focusing laser-like on accent, street vocabulary, and physical cultural traits, you unlock way more than just a language. You literally unlock a new identity. The roadmap is right here. The only question left is, which new version of yourself are you going to meet next? Thanks so much for joining us on The Explainer, and we will see you next time.